what's interesting is that Scale made some really early decisions about engineering's role in how the company operates. And so I think to kick us off, can you tell us a little bit more about the early days of Scale and why you decided engineering should run operations?
So for context, I joined Scale fairly early on. I think I was like the third or fourth engineer. At that time, we didn't have any ops people at all, and so Alex, our CEO, he would ask people to step in and just kind of like try to go figure out how to solve some of the operational problems we're facing, because we were like a managed marketplace in a lot of ways. So a managed marketplace in the sense that customers would send us tasks that had to be labeled, and then we have our crowd in the back end labeling it. And so at the very beginning, it was kind of forced. In some ways, there was just no one to do it. And so engineers stepped in and kind of carved out this role called ops engineering.
When you say ops engineering, can you give us a little bit of a definition for what you mean by that?
Yeah, ops engineering is more like, so when you look at like an operational problem, traditionally, like if you look at supply chain, etc., like there is usually some type of methodology that was already like written or drawn out for like lean manufacturing, all of that. For this, there's a lot of unknowns, and so what you had to do when you look at a problem is you both had to figure out like, okay, what is this problem? For example, I had to, let's say you have to like 30x throughput in a quick time period. Then the question is both like, what are the resources I have to work with? Are there things I can build to reduce the amount of load on the back end for like human labelers, i.e., like, like pre-labeling or like simplifying the tasks in some way, etc. So there was like a combination of both solving the pure ops problem and also like engineering your way so that you can like reduce the scope of the problem. So that's why it's like ops plus engineering in a lot of ways.
I think that's a very interesting angle to look at operation, because in a way, the goal is not to get things done through operation, is to automate, to make things easier. And inevitably, that requires a lot of engineering work, and also the idea of what can be automated, what's doable, what is not, what takes more time, what's the low hanging fruits. So having people that are familiar and can do the work on the engineering side, get it fairly involved, it's really helpful. I think that's not applied to Scale, but I think there might be a lot of other opportunities at different companies who are looking at operation just as operation. So I think that's a very interesting perspective.
Can you tell us a little bit more about how engineering first got involved in taking over operations? Because I'm thinking like this is not the default for most organizations, and there may be like some misconceptions, some resistance, or just I guess misconceptions about getting involved in that. So can you tell us a little more about like what was that like when engineering first got in operations? Like how'd you convince people to take on this particular responsibility?
You could tell like some engineers were unwilling because they're like, like I was hired to code. Like I don't want to like do these like ops heavy work. Initially, it was because just by necessity, there was no one else that could do it, and so people stepped in. But over time, we found that just like there were a lot of problems that were extremely difficult. So the way I liken it is like you have these problems that traditionally, like if you just put an operator on, like how they solve it's not going to propel long-term product growth. And so when you shape like a special kind of program out of it, like at that time we call it like technical product managers or ops engineering, we try to basically brand it as like black ops, i.e., the special kind of ops where you get to do like 10x work and build a lot of product out of it. And that actually, in a lot of ways, attracted very entrepreneurial individuals to want to join. I think a lot of it is like shaping the brand of the program, helping people understand how important it is and the things that they'll learn. Because I do think like for a lot of people that were the initial TPM/ops eng, like they learned like what they learned about ops was like better than they could have learned about like just pure engineering anywhere, and it kind of gave them a special edge too in terms of like like the businesses these days are becoming ever more so like ops intersecting with tech versus just pure tech, like pure software. So I think these things that we pitched for the earlier TPM/ops eng was really helpful. And I liken it like a lot of ways we're trying to brand the program very early on. So the way I likened it was like how Google convinced like people that site reliability engineering, platform engineering was very sexy from the early days. How Palantir was able to hire a lot of forward deploy engineers who are effectively consultants, not always. And then similarly, like how Google went about, like branding the APM program. But I guess APM program is a little bit of stretch because product management has always been very coveted. And so the combination is like, how do you brand the program externally, but also like sell it in a way that kind of speaks to the target audience that you want to work on this problem.